Drilling fluids touch just about everything in the drilling process. We're here to deconstruct the drilling process and drilling fluid concepts to provide a deeper understanding of our industry. In each episode, we'll share information, talk to interesting people, and maybe share a few stories along the way. Welcome to the Flowline, a production of AES Drilling Fluids, brought to you by Matt Offenbacher and Justin Gauthier.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Flowline. Matt, coming off a spring break, man.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Well, it's not like I took a beach vacation or anything, but it was good.
Yeah?
I did the rodeo with the kiddos.
Were you there Saturday night for the big Houston Brawl Fest?
No, my kids don't stay out that late, so we petting zoo and some rides, and we were out of there.
Nice. Getting there early is definitely the key if you have kids.
Yes.
Nice.
And
they enjoyed it?
they did.
Okay.
Yeah, and then World Baseball Classic,
I was going to bring it up, but I'm glad you did. You're reading my mind. So I was gone out of the country. Who's still in it? What's the latest?
Well, the big thing is Team USA, with some controversy, beat the Dominican Republic to go make it to the final.
Okay. I heard you guys talking over lunch, but okay.
Yeah, so lots of excitement. But and then of course I'm trying to Italy may win the whole thing,
which is
part
so
on the other
funny.
side. So, it was kind of funny. So I went to 3 games of the matches here in Houston.
Oh, cool.
And saw Italy versus Brazil. Right when they were warming up, I was like, man, that pitcher, he's got to play professionally or whatever. Then I looked at him, I was like, okay, yeah, he's a major league ball player.
Yeah.
And a few of them who looked really good, I was like, oh, I don't know. These guys are pretty good. But, man, that was really fun. We're so lucky, those of us in Houston, if you got a chance to be there,
yeah,
that was just a really fun, cool thing to do. There were people, even for games where, it was there's not a lot of Italians and not too many Brazilians in Houston, but just people that loved baseball were there.
Yeah.
Alongside all of that. And Mexico, they had great fans. Puerto Rico had great fans.
Yeah.
In fact, I was at the USA-Canada game, and the Puerto Rican fans who were playing the next day were dancing and singing in the concourse.
No way.
It was just, yeah.
What a cool experience.
So, anyways, that was my spring break.
I was gonna ask which is the sleeper country, which clearly it was Italy.
It's got to be Italy.
Did anyone anticipate them doing well?
I don't think so. They beat Team USA.
Yeah.
And it was kind of ooh, what happened? I think Team USA was trying to skate through this, and then it was oh dear, they're good.
That's crazy.
So,
good for them. Who are the notable players in Italy or that play for Italy that we would know?
None.
Really?
Okay, so there's Astro Zach DeCenzo.
Okay.
That was the only name I actually recognized. There are people I was literally, they played for other major league teams, but they weren't top. It was
yeah. Weird.
So.
Oh, I say weird, but that's cool. It makes for a good story.
Yeah.
And so you said USA and Italy are in the finals?
Honestly, I just saw, I think there's one more game because I fell asleep last night.
Okay.
And USA won.
Nice.
So.
All right, well, go USA. Canada they just couldn't pull it through, huh?
No, but they made a match of it. I was surprised. I thought early on we were going to get to leave early because they have a run rule where if you're up by 10 runs, the game ends. But they fought back, which actually brought a lot of energy to the game because there were some key strikeouts and
very cool.
It was like a American all-star team facing.
Yeah.
Anyways, it was cool.
Very nice, very nice. Well, yeah, and then Astros is right around the corner. Opening day can't be too far away, huh?
No.
At this point. Okay, you got your tickets, I'm assuming.
I don't have my ticket, but I feel like I'll end up with one.
Yeah.
I normally kind of wait and see, and then I'm one of those guys too that I live close to the ballpark. So
yeah.
Even the USA Canada game, I was like, I'm so tired. I don't know if I should go. And my wife was like, you should really go. And so I bought the ticket an hour before the game and just went to the ballpark.
So I was curious, is it sold out crowds for these things, or is it easy to get a ticket?
It depends. I got free tickets to the noon games that were non-marquee, I guess. But I was, I mean, the USA Canada game was pretty full. It wasn't packed. It wasn't.
It's not like World Series packed.
No, like I mean, there were empty seats, but it was still pretty filled to the
full.
brim.
Okay, so good energy inside the stadium.
Oh yeah, that was what was pretty crazy. It was just it got really loud. It was as loud as a playoff game.
Yeah.
So
what a cool experience. Right on. Well, I mean, we could keep talking about the rodeo and baseball, but that's not what we get paid to do, is it?
no,
Okay, well, not yet. You
Not
never know.
yet.
Yeah. With that being said, Matt, episodes, they do come in all sort of fashions, and today you had a good conversation with one of our account managers, which spurred the idea to make it into an episode. So I'll let you lay the groundwork on this one.
yeah. So in short, what was happening was it was hey, I've got a CEC number. What would that mean about the MBT of the mud? And it was they're similar but different, and so they're not going to tell you exactly the same thing, but drawing the distinction between cation exchange capacity and the methylene blue test was sort of the premise of this, and so I thought we could kind of explain how these work and how they're a little different, but may indicate something.
Okay. Fun fact, nothing to do with mud, but to do with the methylene blue test. A bunch of biohackers were starting to use methylene blue for, I think, cognitive increasing performance. Had you heard of that?
There's a lot of weird stuff, like when you try and research methylene blue dye.
Yeah.
That, like, there's a lot of medical applications, and there's a lot of people who are like, this is, like, the secret. It's like, what was that, golly, like, during the pandemic, everybody was saying that stuff that would cure COVID.
Yeah. The
the horse thing.
Yeah.
That is used on people, too, but it was sort of like, anyways.
Yeah. I had never heard of that, and it wasn't until a couple years ago it was a trend, and a bunch of biohackers were starting to drink methylene blue, and I was like, wait, the stuff that we do MBT tests with, and come to find out it's the same. I don't know if it's the same grade, but I wonder how many mud engineers out there actually tried it. Anyway, getting off track, I digress, but it was an interesting fun fact about MBT. Let's talk about the purpose, not of drinking it, but by actually using it for drilling fluid purposes. Matt, what is the purpose of MBT and what is the purpose of CEC?
Well, we're trying to measure the reactive clay content, right? And reactive clays are things that have lots of exchangeable cations. So you may recall that there's a lot of on reactive clays. There's a lot of negative surface charges, and they tend to draw these cations, so sodium, calcium, potassium, magnesium, and they're sitting there natively in the clay, but they're willing to do a little swapperoo. So you might have a situation where, let's say you have a calcium cation that it would switch with a sodium, for example, and that kind of changes everything when we with respect to how this might interact with a fluid, because the calcium may actually be holding the two clay platelets together tight enough that water can't enter. But sodium has a much larger ionic radius, which means water can get in. So now I'm dealing with clay hydration and the problems associated with that. So understanding those places where something could swap could tell you what you're going to need to do to keep a formation under control or, get a handle on your fluid. So cation exchange capacity is how many positively charged ions can be held on the surface, or the total negative charge available to hold cations. But the difference, the thing is, we look at that. That's a pretty specific term. You're looking at, with cation exchange capacity, or CEC, what you're actually looking at is a dry sample. So I got a cutting, I got a formation sample, and I'm evaluating that dried chunk of whatever. Where the methylene blue test, we're trying to measure exchangeable cations, but we're measuring them as they sit in the fluid. So do I have some of this stuff from my formation, or it could even be stuff I added on purpose? Is it present in my drilling fluid? How much? And subsequently, we'll get to later, is that a problem?
Okay.
And from a measurement perspective, that methylene blue, what is it? It's a cationic dye. So what happens when we run our methylene blue test, and those of you who, just to refresh everybody's memory, so you take the flask, you put your 1 cc of mud or whatever in there, you'll add some acid, you'll boil it, you want to break down all the polymers and anything else that might actually be sitting on an exchangeable cation site and masking it, right?
Yeah.
So you cook it for a while, and then you take that piece of filter paper, take your glass rod, you add some dye, you had your first 5 cc's or whatever, take your glass rod, put it on a piece of paper, and you're looking for that little halo, and if you don't see it, you add some more dye, let it stir around.
Yeah.
And the idea is that when all of the available dye is tied up, the dye will start to stain that paper and provide that little corona.
Right.
So when all of your exchangeable cation sites are tied up in your drilling fluid, then you start to see that.
Gotcha, yeah.
So, and there is a way to measure CEC where you would take a shale sample and make a slurry of it and do the same thing, but you're just focused on that one little sample. I'm not looking at my drilling fluid composition, which drilling fluid also has other stuff in it that can sort of disrupt your reading. All that being said, our unit sets are a little different. So, CEC of a shale will use milliequivalents per 100 grams. MBT, you may be familiar with, we'll use pounds per barrel, and we'll try it's sort of we're trying to use it as a bentonite equivalent.
Right.
So if I have an MBT of 10, it would supposed to be the equivalent of adding 10 pounds per barrel of bentonite, sodium montmorillonite, which is reactive, right? It's got that sodium ion, so it's going to let water in. And, just to, broadly give you a range, so your really reactive clay is smectite, for example, 80 to 150 milliequivalents per 100 grams. Illite and kaolinite, they're going to be, anywhere from, 10 to 40 on my chart for illite and 3 to 15 for kaolinite, but they don't have a bunch of those exchangeable cation sites, right? So we're just looking at the reactive stuff. It doesn't mean you couldn't have other clay stuff going on. But in both cases of trying to get an MBT on that individual sample, or on a or if you're trying to get a CEC on that individual sample, or if you're running the MBT, you're using a cationic dye, you're trying to determine the number of exchangeable cations, and higher means more reactive. So the bigger difference probably from a precision perspective is the MBT is probably going to be lower than anything you get in a true CEC, because you've got all that mud stuff, and the dye is only going to get to accessible surfaces it can contact with. Where in the actual test, depending on how you run it and take your clay sample you're going to test, you're grinding it up, you're making sure there's plenty of surface area to make sure you get everything.
Sure.
But what does this all mean in the world of fluids? There's some context that matters. For example, a high CEC of a sample says, yes, this is probably very reactive. True, but is it just a little stringer, or is it the whole section, right?
Yep.
Do I need a sledgehammer, or do I just need a little bit of finesse? So I think it only tells you what's in the sample, where MBT is telling you there's a bunch of reactive stuff in your drilling fluid, or there could be if it's high.
Yeah.
So one is probably more for pre-planning risk and context.
Yeah.
The other one is we're doing this right now, and how are we going to handle it?
Right. No, that makes sense. So in what case, Matt, can you give an example where you've tested for CEC and you use that data to then plan or to do, strategize around a certain fluid or area that we were drilling?
Yeah, a lot of times we want to get a representative, give me some cuttings every so much distance so we get more than just one test.
Yep.
And sometimes our customers will even have these petrophysical reports. A lot of times it's just a spreadsheet. It has a listing of every depth a sample was taken and what the CEC was. But if we see really high numbers, that immediately, on the planning side, let's say that's, over 100 or something. It's okay, that's really reactive.
Yeah.
So the first thing, we probably have the question of, do we just use oil-based mud? Another part of that conversation very well could be, do we really want to try and inhibit this thing, or are we even going to be able to keep up? Do we try and disperse it? So apply materials that will break up the clay, as opposed to trying to inhibit it, given how reactive it is. So on that sort of sliding scale, we try and figure out how manageable that is, and that complements with like offsets if we have them in the area and that kind of thing.
Okay.
So I think that's the higher CEC stuff sort of sheds some light on that.
Right.
We can also take those samples, and then we'll actually do, we've talked in the past about our different shale tests we can do with inhibitors and see how effective they are.
Yeah.
But if there's a lot of exchangeable cations, it's some that we need to do some extra work. That's generally the tell.
Okay. So flipping back over to the MBT side, if you're humming along and you test your fluid and you've got a really high MBT, what happens at that point? What are you seeing?
Probably seeing a high viscosity. There's a reasonable chance you're seeing some flocculation, higher fluid loss.
Yeah.
Your mud probably doesn't look great if it's running up on you.
Yeah.
And depending on what you're drilling with, you're going to respond differently. So it could be, a lot of these, you talk about the Gulf Coast and how reactive that stuff is. You're hammering the mud with water. So, it's one thing that I think we talk about. We're so used to unconventionals where we don't deal with that much. It's, surface intermediate. We drill with oil-based mud, the lateral, even water, we're fine. And then all of a sudden you're a derrican on one of these wells, and you're like, dude, when do I stop? When do I sit down? Because we're building volume, we're diluting aggressively, we're letting the MBT tell us how aggressive to dilute. If it comes down, let's say to a 20 or something, we might want to keep that rate and try and stay there, just to keep properties as we drill that section.
Gotcha.
So you'll see that aspect of it. There are other times where we might look and say, hey, this is pretty reactive and I want to inhibit it. And in light of that, you're going to, hopefully not see a lot of in situ reactive solids in your fluid, because if they're just sitting there in your fluid, you probably don't have enough inhibitor and it's probably all getting tied up,
right.
versus having excess that's being applied to the formation. And what are those inhibitors? They have exchangeable cations, right? The idea is that they get in there and block the water from coming in or coat the surface.
Yeah.
So it's all about these charges, right?
Right. So if you have if you're having a high MBT, what are some other things, or really what's your first line of defense there?
It depends on where I'm at, right? I think dilution is going to be your first thing, right? If it's high, you need to get down. And then what do I do moving forward? Am I going to try and break this over and disperse this system to control how bad these reactive clays are getting? That's probably more likely than just being let's add some inhibition.
Yeah.
You can disperse and add something that's inhibitive, with the idea that I break up some of this reactive stuff and then I get the rest with something a little inhibitive, an amine or something along those lines. That's pretty common.
Yeah.
I think. I had a fun thought exercise to explain some of this.
Okay.
That I thought maybe we could kind of wrap with to talk about trying to break systems over, and this is more dealing with anhydrite, right? So, what happens? You get calcium. You've got a gel mud.
Yep.
You got some reactive solids in there. You give it calcium. Well, calcium's supposed to be inhibitive, right? Except for you get a ton of flocculation because calcium is 2+. Right. So one charge hits the negative on a piece of clay platelet, but the other one attaches to another clay platelet. It starts building that house of cards.
Yeah.
And now I start seeing that viscosity. You say, we can't handle all this incoming calcium. It's driving us our mud system crazy. We're going to break it over to a gyp system, right? So I keep adding calcium. And what happens when I add gyp? You get that viscosity. It goes up and up and up, and you're afraid the whole system's going to lock up.
Mm-hmm.
But then, all of a sudden, the mud breaks over, right? What's happened at that point is you've added so much calcium that you have tied up pretty much every available cation exchange site with calcium at this point.
Okay.
So there's none of them to interact with each other and create that flocculation anymore. So that's your viscosity hump, or one of the big factors.
Right. And then it'll start thinning out after that, and you'll start seeing the results you're hoping for.
Yeah, so it looks like a normal mud, but you have this really scary moment, and you've got these exchangeable cations. They're doing their thing, but they're actually tying together clay platelets, creating this viscosity, and the mud looks like you can walk on it. You're worried you're about to get run off, and then whoosh.
Yeah.
And it happens rather suddenly, you know. So we
Wow.
like to demonstrate in the lab sometimes because people are like, "Wow, that was
Yeah.
crazy how quick that turned."
Yeah, I've never experienced that I've broken muds over, but never gone through a high calcium mud where then it kind of goes over the viscosity hump and goes back the other way. But I would imagine if you've never done it or if you're new to that, it could be kind of sketchy. And if you don't know how to explain it, on the verge of folks on the rig wanting to run you off because everything's looking like pudding or close to it. I had a question on that topic. Now it's just wiped away from the brain. Well, never mind. I guess on that, when you do reach that viscosity hump and things start going the other way, does everything that's tied up sort of fall out, or where does it get tied up, and what is it doing?
It's tied up to the clay.
Okay.
So, I mean, the whole thing with JIP is you're just giving it a ton of calcium.
Yeah.
Right? And all of that soluble calcium is sticking to the clay, sticking to the clay, sticking to the clay, and then your system is going from having all these available negative charge sites to nothing.
Okay. Yeah.
And, you'll normally have a dispersant in there as well to help break it over. So,
Gotcha.
But
very cool.
I just thought it was an interesting reactive clay / drilling fluid concept.
Yeah.
To relate to cation exchange.
Well, no, and it's important. We've, come in an era where, we, especially with unconventionals, drill nothing with oil-based mud for the most part. There's obviously, cases where we use water-based mud, but a lot of the old school hands are familiar with drilling with calcium-based muds, whether it's a lime mud or a JIP mud. But you don't see it a lot, especially on land. You don't probably see it offshore still a little bit. But who knows, if oil prices stay in the hundreds, people might be looking to drill with water-based mud here again, and this might be much more relevant than it has maybe in the several years ago. But nonetheless, no, I think it's good. Matt, do you see is there oftentimes people when they're running MBTs, I've seen people run it loosely, maybe not all the time. Is it critical to be very diligent about running it? And obviously, according to API spec, if you're running your 2 mud checks a day, you should be. But is there a case where it's not maybe as necessary if you know the area?
I guess it goes back to, we give geologists a hard time, right? We should be in the sand now. And it's like, really? Where's that sand? Yeah, it's an annoying test to run, but I'm very much a rule follower and very careful on that stuff.
Sure.
I would say that there have been production sections where I knew we were drilling nothing but carbonate. I was a lot focused on other things.
Yeah.
So, I would say that there was a lot of, because reservoir drilling fluids, you don't want any clay. So
Sure.
your MBT should be nothing, but we would run a test that we were looking for just anything that wasn't acid soluble in the drilling fluid. So we would basically make an API filter press of the drilling fluid, wash it with acid, and take the weight compared to a fresh sample and see what insoluble material we were accumulating.
Yeah.
And kind of draw the distinction there. But reactive clay would be a lot worse than sand. But hopefully if you're spending all that money, you're actually in a sand when you're drilling.
Yeah.
So there's that. Yeah. But I would say that there's a lot of times more so when I know what my MPT was, instead of doing 5 at a time, I'll add 20 mil. I'll raise my starting point.
Yeah.
Just because it's look, it was 30 yesterday. It's not going to be any less than 20.
Sure.
Let's start with 20 and see.
Yeah.
You can always redo it if you're off, but it can just save you some time.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, with that said, Matt, those are all the questions I had, and I would imagine this was a very similar conversation like the one you had with the account manager. Was the question answered from the customer side, you think?
I hope so. It was a couple of text messages and a conversation, so...
Yeah.
And it goes back to sometimes we're asked to extrapolate things, and you've got to always do the it depends, right? Where it's here's one CEC value I have from this area. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, that number on its own is kind of high, but I don't know, is there a foot of it, or is there 3,000 feet.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense. Well, with that said, if you do have questions, thoughts, or ideas around this topic, we'd love to hear from you. If you have any ideas for a show or questions, anything related to drilling fluids, please. That's how we generate a lot of the best episodes. And Matt, is there any closing last words, anything else you'd like to share before we wrap it up and move on about the day?
I don't think so. I think I'm lost for words for once.
Right? No, that's it, folks. MBT versus CEC. Hopefully you learned something. I know I always do, talking to my fellow friend Matt here. And with that said, folks, check out the YouTube channel. A lot of great information on there. Website. If you want to connect with Matt or I on LinkedIn, you can reach out, or you can do it old school now at the Flowline podcast at asfluids.com. Take care, folks. Until next time. Cheers.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. Please tune in next week for another exciting episode of The Flowline. And remember, may your returns always be full and your trips always smooth. Views expressed in this program belong to participants and not their employees. The program is for informational purposes only and cannot take the place of seeking professional advice. Copyright AES Drilling Fluids.